to go across now to Mr. P. Chidambaram. And a point of trivia, Mr. Chidambaram holds the record for being the man who's delivered the second most number of budgets. So Morarji Desai delivered 10 budgets, Mr. Chidambaram delivered 9, so he understands every comma and full stop of the budget math. And interestingly, he's been your boss, Dr. Lahiri, in the past?
Direct boss.
So boss aa gaya, direct boss. The boss aa gaya show pe. Okay, let's go across now to Mr. Chidambaram. Mr. Chidambaram, welcome. Now, the government says we're in a tough macroeconomic situation with all the kind of global headwinds that we are facing, have done the best that we could by massively increasing allocation for public spending and infrastructure, which is where the highest multiplier is, the rub-off effect is most for other sectors of the economy, and yet we haven't been fiscally reckless despite the fact that we are heading into an election cycle. Unlike Chidambaram, unlike Pranab Mukherjee of the UPA era, who did all kinds of things in the hopes that spending money would win them votes, this government says we are spending wisely on the infrastructure that matters most to the new India that the government is trying to build without being reckless like you were. How do you respond to that? What's your main critique of the budget? Mr. Chidambaram, welcome.
I hope the finance minister will actually spend the amount. For the current year, she allotted for capital expenditure 7,50,246 crore. But by the end of the year, the government will spend only 7,28,274 crore. So what she has allotted, 10 lakh odd crore, I hope she will spend it next year. At the end of the year, if you allot 10 lakh crore and spend only 8 or 9 lakh crore, this allotment is not expenditure. So whatever you allot for capital expenditure, I welcome it, but make sure you spend what you allot.
So you've been in the hot seat in North Block yourself. You realize better than anyone else the challenges when it comes to getting instruments of government to actually consume the money that is available for building this infrastructure. If they said they'll spend 7.5 lakh crore, spending 7,28,000 crore isn't that much off the target. But I'm trying to understand whether you'd at least accept that they're spending wherever each rupee of the government can do the most. It's not a dole or a freebie that's being handed out. You're laying the building blocks for a new India in the hope that this will spur consumption, this will spur investment, get the private sector active as well. So the government at least is pushing in the right direction. Do you accept that?
Listen, what you say, what I know, surely the finance minister also knows. It is not the allocation which matters. What is the actual expenditure which matters? From 7,50,000 crore, you have jumped it to a little over 10 lakh crore. That's an increase of over 34%. If you have bumped it up in the allocation, you assure us that you will spend, say, 98% of that or 97% of that. I am not sure that the finance minister can say, my business is only to allocate. The execution is not my business. Both are her business. Both are the finance minister's business. If you allocate money, make sure it is spent.
Is that a fair critique, Dr. Lahiri?
No, unspent balances are there at times. But
they've always been.
There always is, and there is the question sometimes that it's a very difficult question to answer. That if it's a leaking pipe, you know, then do you pump more water into it? But when you're allocating money, you actually don't know what the leakages are. So capacity to spend is a major question, but it's very difficult to anticipate.
Mr. Chidambaram, the economic survey says India is likely to grow at 6.5% next year on the back of 7% growth for this year. The IMF says that India will be the fastest growing economy in the world relative to what's happening in the rest of the world. Europe flirting with recession, on the verge of recession, America a meltdown which may not lead to a recession but is a definite and clear slowdown, in the context of these choppy economic waters globally, would you accept that the government's done a reasonably good job of steering the economic wheel? They didn't ram us into uncertainty and into an iceberg, and they've kind of glided the country through at a time of once in 100 years economic uncertainty caused by the pandemic.
No, I would not say that. Let's start with current year. In the current year, the first quarter recorded a growth rate of 13.5%. In the second quarter, it is 6.3%. Now, if the overall annual growth will be only 7%, it is a simple arithmetic that quarter 3 and quarter 4 will record only 4.2 or 4%. So if you now arrange the quarterly growth in one line, it will mean 13.5% in the first quarter, down to 6.3% in the second quarter, further down to 4.2% in the third quarter, and the fourth quarter will be 4%. Is that a virtue? Is that something that we should applaud? I want an ascending quarterly growth rate. What we are getting is a descending quarterly growth rate. I'm not saying this has to be repeated next year. If the government is ensuring that it will grow, the economy will grow next year at 6.1 or 6.8, that's what the chief economic advisors say, the range is 6.1 to 6.8, I'll be happy, but not ecstatic. And I'll tell you why I will not be ecstatic. Why are you comparing our growth rate with the growth rate of China, which has a GDP 5 times more than India's, or America, which is perhaps 10, 12 times more than India? If you grow at 6% and China grows even at 2%, please remember, China will add wealth in 1 year more than the wealth that you will add. Again, that is simple arithmetic. And America, even if it grows at 2% or 2.5%, will add several times more domestic product to its economy than India will have. And why is the government so happy about the ranking? It is the fastest growing major economy in the world. I thought this government abhorred ranking. Then compare it with the other ranks: Global Hunger Index, infant mortality rate, freedom of index ranking. When all those rankings come, you dismiss it. But this one ranking, that you are the largest growing economy, yes, I'm happy. But the largest growing economy must be seen in relative terms, the overall size of the economy and the per capita income. If you factor all those aspects, the fact that we are a small economy growing at a faster rate does not make me ecstatic. It makes me happy, but not ecstatic.